guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the last video I'm going to post for a while because I am going to be traveling for about a month and I'm not taking my laptop with me, so I'm not going to be able to upload any videos to YouTube. I might upload shorts, but I'll be back around like mid to end of June. So for today's video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. It's not going to be focused on Go Battle League, but it is going to be focused on Battle Frontier, and I've been getting some requests to make some content about the Show 6 Pick 3 format for PvP. And I was going through my storage the other day and I realized I still have all of my battles recorded from Battle Frontier, so I decided to pick my favorites because there are some that were really good and I would love to share them with you guys. And I'm just gonna compile them into this video and talk about them. The team I'm playing for is Cold Love for the Win. We are a brand new team in the EMEA region, and Battle Frontier is new to our region, so we ended up playing in the open tier this cycle against all the other EMEA teams, and whoever came in top 8 would make it to the highest tier of Battle Frontier, which is the legendary rank. We ended up making it, and I was really surprised that we did so well. But also, I was really happy with my contributions to the team. I was the Ultra League specialist on the team. I played for 9 out of the 10 rounds that we competed in, and I ended up going 7-2. So I won 7 of my rounds and I lost 2. The scores that I'm showing you on the screen, one of them is incorrect. For one of my losses, it shows a 0, but I actually went 1-2. I never got swept. And the Ultra League meta we had in the last cycle of Battle Frontier was the Enchanted domain. It is a limited meta, which means that only certain Pokemon are allowed. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can check it out on PvPoke. And yeah, I'm just going to show you guys some of my best battles today. I picked some of these because I felt like, you know, it would be a shame to just delete them. And I felt like some of these were really good. Anyways, let's just get into it. I hope that you guys will find this video interesting and informative, especially if you're looking to get into Show 6 Pick 3. Okay, we're actually starting off with a loss here, but I wanted to show you guys how I switched up my strategy in the game I played after this. So we are going to lead double into Annihilate, which is such a terrible lead for us. I was calling that my opponent would think that maybe I was going to use double as a safe swap. And I thought my opponent was definitely going to have the Annihilate in the back. So I have the double on the lead and I have something in the back that was going to be good versus Annihilate. My safe swap in this instance was going to be that Drapion. Drapion was pretty good against his entire team, I would say. And I know for sure that my opponent is going to have that Licky in the back. So right now it's not looking very good for me because my Skeledirge is going to be aligned to Licky. And in this instance, I end up losing, obviously, because I get hard countered. But in the next game, I do switch up my strategy. I noticed that what my opponent was trying to do was they would have the Annihilate on the lead, but then they would have a back line where they can draw the double out with one of their back Pokemon, and then their Licky would be able to sweep in the back. So I kept that in mind. And actually here I end up losing this because I mess up. I could have won it. It would have been a really close loss. I should have thrown the Disarming Voice here, taken my opponent's final shield, and I had the Body Slam ready on the double, but I messed up. Alright, so in the next game I put the Drapion on the lead. That way if it is Annihilate bleed, I'm still going to do pretty well against it. These crunches are going to do a lot of damage to Annihilate. I think I only need like 2 to take it out, and if I get a defense drop, even better. But my opponent swaps out and catches the crunch on their Skuntank. Okay, now I can win this. I'm going to go ahead and invest a shield. I notice what my opponent is trying to do. They want me to swap into my double. They're trying to draw it out. I know that their third Pokemon is going to be that Licky for sure because it is very strong against my team. As long as they can get the double out of the way, like I said, Licky can sweep. So I didn't want to let them do that. I went ahead and I shielded my Drapion. I won the match up against the Skuntank. And now I have Cresselia aligned to their Annihilate. And hopefully they have that Licky in the back, which they do. I'm going to have double aligned to Licky. So this way I was able to get the alignment that I wanted, and I should be able to take this win. Just gonna go for these body slams up against this Licky Licky, and I'm expecting them to have the second move might be the Shadow Ball, because Shadow Ball is pretty strong against my team, or the Earthquake. Earthquake could be a possibility as well because it will hit for super effective against the Drapion. My opponent swaps back into Annihilate. I have a lot of energy loaded on my Cresselia. Gonna go for that Moonblast. My opponent has no shields left. Gonna go for another Moonblast. Hopefully this is enough to take it out. It is not enough, but I had to go for that Moonblast because my opponent was going to reach a move. I throw the Body Slam immediately on the Annihilate to take it out. That way I don't take any counter damage, and I'm able to reach another Body Slam on the Licky Licky, and I take that win. I did end up winning this particular matchup. I went 2-1. All right, up next, we have one of the closest matches I played this season. We are going to lead Flygon into Weezing, and this is an okay lead. I am expecting my opponent to run that Play Rough. Unfortunately, we're going to get baited here, and they're going to go Brutal Swing. I could have no-shielded that, and then shielded the next move, which is definitely going to be the Play Rough. The Scorching Sands is not enough to take the Weezing out. They live with very little HP, but I'm okay with that. I'm going to let my Flygon go, and I'm going to bring Regis, and I'm going to farm them down. It looks like my opponent isn't going to have an answer to Regis in the back. They bring Tapu Fini in. I go for that Thunder. We take out more than half their health, and my opponent is going to have that Drapion in the back. So they bring it in up against our Shadow Drapion. I'm just going to go for these crunches, and hopefully I can get a debuff. We get the debuff. Okay, this is looking really good for me. But they also get a debuff, so I'm just going to go for that next crunch. I am going to be able to outpace to the moves because my opponent stayed in with Tapu Fini up against our Drapion. I just need to reach another crunch, but I called that my opponent was going to swap into Tapu Fini to take my Drapion out. I swap immediately into my Regis. I'm going to shield whatever this is now. It is a Surf, and I'm going to go for a Thunder here, expecting my opponent to let their Tapu Fini go and save their final shield for Drapion. Drapion should be able to reach 2 crunches. So I go for that Thunder, and they're farming up, which is making me so nervous. I thought here for sure I was going to lose, but my Regis actually lives with 1 HP. I swap into my Drapion. I didn't want them to farm me down, and I force them to throw the crunch on our Drapion. I bring Regis back in, and I'm actually able to reach the Thunder and take them out. I was so surprised I won that. I should point out that the meta for this cup shifted so much as we were playing. Before the season started, Annihilate was not introduced in the game yet. Then it got introduced. It was allowed in Enchanted domain, so that changed a lot of things. And then later on, when a new season of Go Battle League started and we got some move updates, Empoleon got banned. And to replace Empoleon, they allowed Blastoise, and when Blastoise entered the meta, then that also shifted a lot of things. And these first few battles are before Blastoise was allowed. And then later on, Tapu Fini got a move update as well. It got Nature's Madness, and that became more popular, so they really kept us on our toes with this meta. The game I have running in the background, I just included because Regis and Flygon really shine in this game. They put in a lot of work. My opponent led Weezing into our Regis, which is a really good lead for us because I am running that Earthquake on the Regis. And then they swap into Drapion, and I have the Flygon for the Drapion. I went for that Scorching Sands. I was able to take the Drapion out with our Flygon, and my opponent has a Tapu Fini in the back. I'm going to invest a shield here so that I could get a Scorching Sands off on the Tapu Fini or take their final shield. I take their final shield, and then I bring in Weezing to finish his Tapu Fini off. I'm not running Play Rough on my Weezing. I prefer the Overheat. I'm gonna go for that Overheat, and we get it really low. It is in Fairy Wind range. We Fairy Wind it down, and we take that win. These next battles are with Galarian Moltres, and this chicken absolutely shined. Let me tell you, it pulled so much weight, and I was just really happy to run something that was off meta. In the first match, we are going to be met with a Blastoise on the lead. I went ahead and I threw a Brave Bird, and then I swapped out into my own Blastoise. Now I recognize that on my opponent's team, they don't really have a solid answer to my Blastoise, so I can bring it and use it as a safe swap. And this is going to give me the freedom to put the Moltres on the lead, knowing that I could swap into something that is most likely going to draw out something else that is going to have a neutral matchup up against their Blastoise. In this case, we draw out the Annihilate, and my opponent actually swaps out of their Annihilate into Licky Licky. What they could have done is they could have let their Annihilate go down to Cresselia, and then they would have had Licky Licky aligned to her Cresselia, but instead they swap out, which means I can now lock my Moltres into their Licky Licky, and Moltres is going to be resisting those licks, so I am going to be doing well against this Pokemon. Also, what I did here was I tried to waste as much time as I could until my switch timer was up, and then I threw the Brave Bird, knowing that I could swap out and clear the debuff. But my opponent actually lets the Brave Bird go on their Licky Licky, so we're almost able to take it out. My Cresselia is able to sweep the Blastoise and the Annihilate, and I'm able to take that win. On to the next battle. I actually called my opponent's lead in this game, and I put Cresselia on the lead. They lead Blastoise. I have that Grass Knot on my Cresselia, so we are going to be in a really good position. I just have to watch out for if my opponent goes for a potential catch. They don't. We're able to land a Grass Knot. I go for another Grass Knot. Now my opponent might have to shield. They don't. They actually let the Grass Knot go. And I really, really want to farm them down here. It might be a dumb idea because, yeah, they end up reaching another move. But because I have so much energy on my Cresselia, I end up shielding. My opponent brings in that Licky Licky. I go for that Future Sight, and it doesn't do that much damage. Licky Licky is one of the strongest Pokemon in this meta, and that's why, because it is super bulky. But I swap out into my Blastoise, again, knowing that my opponent isn't going to have a solid answer to Blastoise. I can bring it in and not let this Licky Licky farm my Cresselia down. Cresselia also has a little bit of energy left, so I might be able to reach another move on it. They stay in for quite a while, and then they bring in Annihilate. They don't shield the Hydro Cannon. I think if they shielded the Hydro Cannon, they would have been in a much better position. But now I can bring in my Moltres, and they're in Ancient Power range, so I just have to go for those Ancient Powers. I even get a boost on the Ancient Power, so this close combat is going to hurt a lot less, and we're able to take it perfectly fine. Take the Annihilate out, and then farm the Licky Licky down and take that win. Moving on to the next game, I go in with the same team again because here's the thing. I know that my Blastoise is the strongest Pokemon against their team, and technically their best answer to Blastoise is going to be Annihilate. So if my opponent calls that I put Blastoise on the lead, then they are likely to lead Annihilate, which they do, and I end up having Cresselia aligned to Annihilate. My opponent swaps out into Licky Licky, and I bring in my Moltres. I kept farming until my opponent threw a move because I really needed them to get rid of some of that energy, because if I debuff myself, then I will be forced to shield. But in this case, my opponent actually lets the Brave Bird go. They have a Weezing in the back, they bring it in, and they even let the Brave Bird go on the Weezing. We're able to get them into the red with our Galarian Moltres, and then I can bring in Blastoise and go for, I think I'm going to go for a full farm down up against this Weezing, but my opponent notices this, so they swap out into Annihilate. I know now that my win condition is with Cresselia, so I let the close combat go on my Blastoise, and I save 2 shields for Crest. I'm going to go ahead and shield whatever this is here, because if it is a Shadow Ball, it's going to hurt more than the Brutal Swings. It's another close combat. I'm able to farm their Annihilate down, and the Weezing is in Grass Knot range, so I can just go for that Grass Knot and take them out. This next opponent had me so hard countered. Look at the teams on the left, and look at my Pokemon and look at his Pokemon. His entire team hard counters what I was bringing. Like, they had the Mandibuzz, I had Jellicent, they have Annihilate, I have Licky Licky, they have Magnezone, and I have Cress, Clefable, and Dragonite, and also Golisopod and Sandslash. So I was really hard countered in this matchup, and I end up losing 1-2 to this opponent, but I played out of my mind, and I was actually really proud of how I played. This first game I'm showing you guys is the third game that we played. It wasn't the first one, and I was actually able to call what my opponent was going to lead because of what they had brought in their previous games. I felt like they were going to lead the Clefable, so I put Cresselia on the lead. My opponent had led Magnezone in the first 2 games, and I felt like they were just not going to call a Cresselia lead. There was no way, and if they had Magnezone on the lead, I knew that I could take it out with 2 future sites, so I brought Cresselia. When my opponent swaps into Mandibuzz, I decide to stay in with my Cresselia because I have those Moonblasts that are going to hit for super effective, and I have a feeling that my opponent has the Shadow Magnezone in the back. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to draw Sandslash out, that way their Magnezone will be free. But I recognize this, I stayed in with Cresselia, I did as much damage as I could to the Mandibuzz, and then when I brought Sandslash in, my opponent didn't like the idea of me farming up a lot of energy on my Sandslash, so they swap out into their Clefable. Before I swap out of Sandslash into my Jellicent, I recognize that having a ton of energy built up on my Sandslash is going to be so helpful for me. So what I do is I farm up as much energy as I can, and then I manage to catch a Meteor Mash on my Jellicent, and I'm correct, my opponent is going to have that Magnezone in the back. I'm able to land a Shadow Ball on it, get it into the red. Now they go for a Wild Charge here, so they debuff themselves. I'm able to farm them down. However, my opponent swapped out of Clefable with energy, so that's going to be really important later on. My opponent brings their Mandibuzz back in. They go ahead and use their final shield. They go for a Dark Pulse here, and that is going to put us in Meteor Mash range if my opponent has that Meteor Mash ready. I have 2 Ice Punches built up, but unfortunately, Clefable wins CMP over Alolan Sandslash, and I am going to go ahead and lose this game. This next match is actually the second match that I played against this opponent. I know I put them in a weird order, but my opponent leads Shadow Magnezone into our Shadow Alolan Sandslash. And what my opponent did in the first game was they baited with a Meteor Mash, so I call here that my opponent isn't going to do the same. They're going to go immediately for that Wild Charge, and then they swap out into Clefable. I farm up a little bit of extra energy again before swapping out into Jellicent. I was trying to catch a Meteor Mash. Unfortunately, my opponent kept farming, and we have to take a Moonblast on our Jellicent. I'm able to land a Shadow Ball on the Clefable, and we should be able to Hex them down. Now the Clefable's out of the way, that's good, but my opponent is probably going to bring that Magnezone back in and get energy off of us. Unfortunate, but I can bring my Alolan Sandslash in now and go for a bait with the Ice Punch. My opponent shields it, and I'm going to go ahead and shield whatever this is. It is the Wild Charge, and then they swap out into Mandibuzz. Okay, so I have Alolan Sandslash and Cresselia left. Cresselia and Alolan Sandslash should do pretty decent against this Mandibuzz, and I know that my opponent is going to be pressured to not shield anything on Mandibuzz because I have energy built up on my Alolan Sandslash. And if they use their final shield, it means that their Magnezone is going to have to take a Drill Run from our Mandibuzz. So I'm able to reach a 3rd Moonblast. It's enough to take the Mandibuzz out. My opponent is going to have to go for a farm down on our Cresselia. I go for a future sight and take their final shield. And then in the middle of their Volt Switch, I swap out into my Alolan Sandslash and I go for that Drill Run and take that win. I really felt like I had to fight for my life for that win because that was a rough matchup for me. Alright, next match, I included this one because double is just amazing. As you've seen in my previous games, I like to run double with Wild Charge, and you'll see just how strong that moveset can be in this game in particular. Up first on the lead, we are going to see that Galarian Weezing, and we are running that Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion is going to do a lot of damage with the Sludge Bomb. We manage to get it into Crunch range, then we go for that Crunch, and we take the lead. My opponent brings in Blastoise, and I decide to bring in my own Blastoise. So it looks like my opponent is going to be running a similar backline to mine, but I am expecting their double to be running Payback instead of Wild Charge. I'm gonna go for a Skull Bash here. Let's see if my opponent decides to shield or not. They don't. We get them into the red, and now I'm gonna bring in my own double, and I think I'm gonna go for a full farm down here. Yes, I'm gonna take this Body Slam. It's just a Body Slam, that's perfectly fine. My opponent realizes that I was gonna farm them down, so they swap out into their Blastoise. I need to keep in mind that that double is still alive, and they go for a Hydro Cannon here. Of course I have to shield. I build up almost to 2 wild charges. It would have been better for me to just build up to the 2 wild charges before throwing it, before debuffing myself. But we're able to reach that second one anyways, and then Blastoise can take care of the 1 HP double in the back. This next opponent is from the final team that we battled against in the entire cycle, and their team, let me just say, is absolutely stacked. They are so good. Tea and Pizza, I think you've probably heard of them if you're into Battle Frontier. They're a very strong team. And we lost to them, but we didn't lose too badly. So we went 10-11, I believe the score was. Anyways, my opponent leads double into our Cresselia. Not the best lead for me because that double has payback, but then they swap into Ampharos, and I'm definitely expecting the Ampharos to be running the Focus Blast because look at my team. It's going to be good for Guzzlord, Double, and Overqwil. I'm also expecting them to run the Thunder Punch for Blastoise. So I stayed in with my Cresselia and I managed to get it really low with the Future Sights. I then bring in my own double and I tried to farm the Ampharos down, but of course my opponent didn't let me. They swap into their double, but because I'm not switch locked, I go for that wild charge and then I swap out into my Overqwil. I'm able to farm their double down and have energy for the Skeledirge that my opponent has in the back. We go for an Aqua Tail and take our opponent's final shield, and then my opponent swaps into Ampharos. They had energy on it. They can go for a Thunder Punch and take our Overqwil out. And now I have to hope that I can reach 2 wild charges to take the Skeledirge out because 1 is not going to be enough. This is where payback would have been more useful, but I'm able to go for that first one and I'm able to get the second one off and we take that win. It got really close there. Now in this next game, my opponent leads Skeledirge and I was really contemplating putting my Blastoise on the lead, but I was really afraid of their Ampharos. Now, I'm going to go for a wild charge and my opponent is probably going to throw their move immediately, so I swap into Blastoise to take whatever move they're going to throw. It is a Disarming Voice. I was hoping it would be the Flamethrower, but then they swap into Tapu Fini, so they're probably not running that Ampharos in this match. Sorry, I had to cut out a little chunk there, but basically I went for Skull Bash, they went for Nature's Madness. Both of us didn't shield the moves, so they landed. And my opponent is going to be able to take our Blastoise out. However, that means I'm going to be able to bring Overqwil in, farm that Tapu Fini down, and my opponent is going to bring that Skeledirge back in. I shielded in case it is a Flamethrower. It wasn't, it was just Disarming Voice. Then I go for an Aqua Tail, take a shield for my opponent as well, and my opponent is going to bring that double back in here. Now, I'm going to go for the Body Slams. I'm just going to go for the Body Slams, and I tap the Body Slam here. I thought I messed up. I thought maybe I should have gone for the Wild Charge here, but this was my win condition because now it means I'm going to be able to completely farm this double down and have 2 Aqua Tails ready for the Skeledirge. I'm going to throw them immediately. The first one takes their final shield, and the second one is going to land, and it's going to be enough to take the Skeledirge out, and we take that final win. That's going to be the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you guys like content like this. If you guys like my content, please consider subscribing, maybe leave a like, it helps me out so much, and I will see you guys in the next video and after my travels. Bye bye!